The summons came, as it always did, through channels too sterile and too opaque for comfort. My name is Albert Davis, and for 17 years, I'd navigated the labyrinthine corridors of what we euphemistically called special projects within the agency. It was a division so deeply buried it practically had its own geological strata. The missions were never simple, never clean, and always left a residue on the soul. This last one, though, this one burrowed deeper, into the marrow, and remains there, a cold, immutable knot. Mr. Sterling presided over the briefing. He was a relic from a colder war, a man whose face seemed sculpted from glacial ice and cigar smoke. His office, high in Langley, offered a panoramic view of the Virginia woods, but the atmosphere inside was always subarctic. He gestured towards a large, wall-mounted display with a flick of his bony wrist. A satellite image resolved into a stark white expanse, punctuated by a tiny, almost invisible cluster of structures. Site Kestrel, Brooks Range, Alaska, Sterling began, his voice a dry rustle, like dead leaves skittering across concrete. Established 3 years ago. Ostensibly a joint geophysical and meteorological research station. Privately funded, with indirect government oversight. He paused, letting the implications of indirect oversight settle in the room. It meant we owned it, lock, stock, and anomaly. I sat opposite him, flanked by the other 2 members of my hastily assembled team. Dr. Evelyn Hayes, a brilliant physicist with a penchant for exotic energy signatures, fiddled with the stylus of her encrypted tablet, her brow furrowed in concentration. On my other side, Marcus Mac Thorne, ex-Special Forces and our security and logistics rock, sat with the stillness of a man who had seen too much to be easily surprised, his gaze fixed on Sterling. Their primary mandate, Sterling continued, was the study of unique atmospheric phenomena and subterranean energy fluctuations reported in the region. Highly specialized work. He tapped the screen, highlighting the station. Site Kestrel went dark 2 hours ago. Complete communications blackout. No distress signal, no automated system failures reported prior, just silence. Evelyn leaned forward slightly. What kind of energy fluctuations, sir? The preliminary data packet was sparse. Sterling's eyes, chips of cold blue, flickered towards her. Classified beyond your current access, Dr. Hayes. Sufficient to say, they were significant enough to warrant the construction of a state-of-the-art facility in one of the most inhospitable environments on Earth. He turned his gaze back to me. Davis, your team's objective is threefold. 1. Reach Site Kestrel and ascertain the status of the station and its personnel. There are 12 researchers and support staff. Their welfare is paramount. His tone was flat, belying any genuine concern. Welfare checks in our line of work often meant body recovery. 2, he went on, diagnose and rectify the communications failure. Re-establish contact with this office immediately upon doing so. 3, conduct a preliminary assessment of any unusual circumstances or contributing factors to the blackout. Specifically, we need to know if the primary research subject is involved. The energy fluctuations, I clarified, keeping my voice neutral. Precisely. Sterling's lips thinned into something that might have been a smile on a different face. We have a narrow window. A weather system is moving in. You'll have approximately 48, perhaps 72 hours on site before extraction becomes problematic. A C-130 will take you to Fort Wainwright. From there, a specialized helicopter transport, ski-equipped, will insert you as close to the site as possible. Captain Prendergast of the 152nd Aviation Regiment will be your pilot. He's good and discreet. Max spoke for the first time, his voice a low rumble. Previous team psych evaluations, any red flags, environmental hazards beyond the usual Arctic drill? All personnel were top tier, rigorously vetted, Sterling replied, a hint of impatience creeping in. No anomalies in their recent reports, though the last few transmissions were concise. As for hazards, it's the Brooks Range in late autumn. Expect extreme cold, unpredictable weather, and apex predators. Your gear is rated accordingly. He gestured to a stack of sealed dossiers on his desk. Full personnel list, station schematics, known equipment inventories. Standard non-disclosure agreements are, of course, in effect. Any questions that cannot wait until you're airborne? I thought of several. What exactly were they studying that required such secrecy? What was the contingency if the energy fluctuations were hostile? Why the palpable sense of urgency that Sterling's monotone failed to conceal? But I knew the answers would be evasive or non-existent. In special projects, you learn to read the silences, to infer from the omissions. This mission stank of something rotten beneath a very thin layer of official ice. "No, sir," I said. Evelyn and Mac murmured their assent. "Good." Sterling rose, a signal the briefing was over. "The aircraft leaves in 4 hours. Be on it." The flight to Fairbanks was long and filled with a tense quiet. We each reviewed our sections of the dossiers. Mine focused on operational command, station security protocols, and personnel backgrounds. Evelyn immersed herself in the technical specifications of the station's sensor arrays and power systems. Max studied topographical maps, potential ingress and egress routes, and the limited information on local wildlife, though his expression suggested he was more concerned with the two-legged kind of trouble. The silence from Site Kestrel was the loudest thing in my mind. 12 people, highly trained, highly intelligent, vanishing without a whisper. It wasn't equipment failure. Equipment failure left a trail, error codes, garbled transmissions, partial signals. This was a void. Captain Prendergast was as advertised, competent, taciturn, with eyes that had seen a lot of sky. His UH-60, modified for Arctic operations, lifted off from a snowy forward operating base just outside Fairbanks as the sun bled weakly across the horizon. The vast, snow-covered expanse of Alaska unrolled beneath us, a breathtakingly beautiful and utterly indifferent landscape. The Brooks Range loomed in the distance, jagged peaks clawing at a bruised twilight sky. Coming up on the estimated coordinates for Site Kestrel, Prendergast's voice crackled over the intercom a few hours later. "Visibility is dropping. That weather system Sterling mentioned is moving faster than predicted. I'll set you down about half a click southeast of the main complex. It's the only reasonably flat, sheltered spot I can guarantee for a pickup." "Understood, Captain," I replied. "How's it looking down there?" "Quiet. Too quiet." He paused. "Got a visual on the station. Lights are on. No smoke, no visible damage. Looks like they just turned off the coffee pot and walked away." The helicopter settled onto the pristine snow with a soft crunch. The wind was already picking up, whipping ice crystals into our faces as we disembarked, dragging our gear. The whine of the turbines receded, leaving behind a silence so profound it felt like a physical pressure against my eardrums. No birds, no animal calls, just the mournful sigh of the wind across the endless snow. Site Kestrel was a cluster of interconnected low-profile modular buildings designed to withstand the brutal Arctic conditions. Its dark, composite materials absorbed what little light there was, making it seem like a scar on the white landscape. Lights glowed from several windows, incongruously warm and inviting in the desolation. But there was no movement, no plumes of vapor from heating vents, no tracks in the snow leading to or from the structures, save for where the wind had sculpted drifts. "Evelyn, initial readings?" I asked, my voice sounding unnaturally loud in the stillness. My breath plumed white in front of my face. She held up a handheld device, its screen glowing faintly. Ambient temperature -22 Celsius, barometric pressure steady, radiation levels normal. She frowned. There's an energy signature, though. Broad spectrum, pulsed. Very faint from out here, but it's definitely originating from the station. Not like any conventional power source I'm familiar with. It's irregular. Irregular how? Mac asked, scanning the perimeter with practiced eyes, his rifle held at a low ready. The pulses aren't rhythmic. They're sporadic, almost responsive, like it's listening, Evelyn murmured, more to herself than to us. She tapped the screen. And there's a low-frequency EM field I can't account for. It's blanketing the immediate area. Could be interfering with long-range comms. Could be deliberate, I said. We moved cautiously towards the main airlock, a reinforced structure on the lee side of the largest module. The access panel was dark. Mac slung his rifle and produced a toolkit. Standard civilian, grade security. If they followed the manual, default override codes should work. He plugged a small interface into a port beneath the keypad. A few seconds later, the panel flickered to life. He typed rapidly. The heavy outer door hissed and slid open with a gust of surprisingly warm, stale air. The interior was dimly lit by emergency lights. The primary power was clearly on, but many systems seemed to be in a standby or error state. The airlock cycled, and we stepped into a small decontamination chamber. Beyond it, another door led into the station proper. This one was ajar. Clear, Mac announced after a methodical sweep of the immediate reception area. It was neat, almost sterile, but a discarded coffee mug sat on a console, its contents long cold. A monitor displayed the station's logo, frozen. "This place feels wrong," Evelyn whispered, her earlier scientific curiosity now tinged with a visible unease. She wasn't wrong. It wasn't just the silence or the emptiness. There was an oppressive quality to the air, a sense of recent, hurried departure, yet no sign of struggle. We moved into the main corridor. Doors led off to labs, living quarters, a mess hall, and a central operations room. All were empty. In the mess hall, we found the first truly unsettling detail. A table was set for one, a meal of what looked like rehydrated stew half-eaten, a fork resting on the edge of the plate. The food was frozen solid. Not flash-frozen by a sudden temperature drop. The station's internal climate control was holding at a steady, if cool, 18 degrees Celsius. This meal had simply sat here, growing cold, then freezing slowly over time. But according to Sterling, the station had only been dark for 3 days. This looked weeks old, yet the ambient temperature wouldn't account for it. "Chronometer check," I said. My watch read 19:37 Alaska Standard Time. Evelyn and Mac confirmed. "The comms blackout was 72 hours ago," Evelyn stated, looking at the frozen meal. This doesn't track. "Unless their definition of blackout is different from ours," Mac grunted. "Maybe they lost internal comms first, something localized, before the whole system went down." I shook my head. Sterling was specific. Total silence. No automated alerts, nothing. We proceeded to the communications hub. It was a small, soundproofed room, packed with equipment. All of it was powered on, lights blinking, fans whirring softly. But the main output displays were blank, or showed no signal. Evelyn immediately went to work, her fingers flying across control panels. "The satellite uplink it's bizarre. It's showing a perfect lock, full signal strength, but it's not handshaking with the network, like talking to a dead line that still insists it's connected." She pulled up a diagnostic screen. "The internal LAN is operational, but data packets are looping back, corrupted. Short-range radio, nothing but static." She switched on a speaker. A burst of harsh white noise filled the room, then abruptly cut off. In the sudden silence that followed, I thought I heard something else, a faint, melodic whisper, too brief to identify. "Did you hear that?" I asked. Evelyn and Mac looked at me. "Hear what? The static?" Evelyn asked. No, after the static, just for a second. They both shook their heads. Mac's eyes narrowed. Wind, maybe? Vent system? Possibly. But the station's environmental controls were modern. Whisper. Quiet. I made a mental note. Auditory pareidolia under stress was common, but I was rarely prone to it. We decided to check the personnel quarters next. Each room was small, utilitarian, but personalized with books, pictures, small trinkets. All were empty, beds neatly made or slightly rumpled, as if the occupant had just stepped out. In Dr. Eris Thorne's room, no relation to Mac, according to the dossier, just an unfortunate coincidence of names that made Mac scowl slightly when he read it. A lead physicist on the project. An e-reader lay open on the nightstand, its screen displaying a complex scientific paper. Its battery was dead. In another room, belonging to a geologist named Lena Hansen, a framed photo of a smiling child on a beach lay face down on the floor. There was no dust around it, suggesting it had fallen recently. I picked it up. The glass wasn't cracked. It was just placed there, or dropped. Security logs, I said, turning to Mac. Let's see what the cameras recorded. The security station was a small alcove off the main operations room. Several monitors showed live feeds from various points around the station. Empty corridors, silent labs, the dark, windswept exterior. Mac expertly navigated the system, accessing the archived footage. Recording stopped 75 hours ago, Mac announced, his voice tight. Right around the time Sterling said they went dark. The last 30 minutes of footage before the system-wide shutdown. Look at this. He queued up a camera feed from the main corridor, near the operations room. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, a figure, Dr. Thorne, the physicist, walked into frame, looked around furtively, then hurried towards the communications hub. He seemed agitated. A few minutes later, he emerged, looking even more distressed, and practically ran towards his quarters. That was it. The feed then dissolved into static, followed by a no-signal message. All other camera feeds showed similar patterns: normal activity, then a period of emptiness, then the system-wide failure. No signs of struggle, no intruders, Evelyn observed. He just looked scared. What about the station logs? I asked. Operational logs, personal entries if they kept any digitally. Evelyn returned to a terminal in the operations room. This was her domain. After several minutes of navigating complex, obviously custom software, she sighed in frustration. Most of the critical system logs are corrupted. Specifically, the sensor logs detailing the energy fluctuations. It's not accidental corruption either. It looks like targeted wiping, but messy, incomplete. Some fragments remain, but they're gibberish without context. She paused, then her eyes widened slightly. Wait, there's a secondary system, a sort of internal memo board, less secure, probably used for informal shift notes, reminders. Let me see. A few more clicks, and a simple text interface appeared on her screen. Most entries were mundane. Generator maintenance schedule posted. Remember to log reagent use. Whose turn is it to clean the coffee machine? Again, Henderson? But as she scrolled down to the more recent entries, the tone changed. Hearing strange noises at night, like whispering. Maintenance says HVAC is fine. Entry dated 10 days prior. Sensors in Sector Gamma are going haywire. Readings are off the charts, then flatline. Thorne says it's interference, but it feels different. 8 days prior. Lena saw someone outside last night. No tracks. Probably just tired. We're all tired. 7 days prior. Then, a final cluster of entries, all dated approximately 4 days ago, just before the communications blackout. It's in the walls. I can hear it. It knows our names. Unsigned. Thorne is losing it. Keeps talking about patterns in the static. Says the energy signature is adapting. Don't trust the reflections. And the last entry, stark and chilling. It's not what we thought. It's not a phenomenon. It's here. A cold dread settled over me, far colder than the Arctic air outside. This wasn't a simple equipment malfunction. This wasn't a case of cabin fever. The previous team had encountered something that had terrified them, something that, according to their own words, was aware. Evelyn pushed back from the console, her face pale. Albert, that energy signature I detected earlier, the pulsed one? What about it? It's stronger now, and the pulses, they're matching the rhythm of my heartbeat. She held up her hand, and it was trembling slightly. It's like it's synchronizing, or listening more intently. Mac, who had been silently observing the station schematics on another monitor, suddenly stiffened. He pointed to a small indicator light on the security panel. External door sensor. Airlock. It just registered an opening sequence. We looked at each other. Prendergast was long gone. The wind howled outside, a desolate moan. There was no one else out there. But it's not registering a closure, Mac added, his voice dangerously low. The outer door is open. I felt a prickle on my skin, the instinctual alarm that had kept me alive on too many operations. Stay sharp, I said, my hand going to the sidearm holstered beneath my parka. We weren't told to expect company. The thought that the company might already be inside, and had been for some time, was one I pushed firmly to the back of my mind. For now. The station was no longer just a mystery. It was rapidly becoming a threat, and we were alone, cut off, with something that knew we were here. The first phase of Sterling's neatly defined mission, ascertain personnel status, was already looking grim. The second, rectify communications, felt impossibly distant. And the third, preliminary assessment of unusual circumstances, was taking on a terrifying new dimension. The wind seemed to carry whispers now, or perhaps it was just the station itself, breathing around us. We moved with practiced caution back towards the airlock, Mac taking point, his rifle now shouldered and ready. Evelyn stayed close behind me, her earlier scientific detachment replaced by a wired alertness. The emergency lights cast long, dancing shadows that seemed to writhe with a life of their own. Every creak of the station's structure, every sigh of the ventilation system, sounded amplified, suspicious. The inner airlock door was closed as we'd left it. Mac checked the manual release, still locked from this side. He then accessed the airlock's internal camera feed via his ruggedized tablet. The small screen showed the interior of the airlock chamber, and beyond it, through the thick porthole of the outer door, nothing but swirling snow and darkness. Outer door still ajar, according to the sensor, Mac murmured, his eyes flicking between the tablet and the physical door. Camera shows nothing in the chamber itself. No footprints leading away from the station either, not that we'd see much in this blow. Could it be a sensor malfunction? Evelyn asked, her voice tight. The EM field I detected, it could be playing havoc with unshielded electronics. Possible, I conceded. But we can't assume that. If that door is open, the internal temperature of this station is going to plummet. We need to secure it. I'll go, Mac said. You two cover me from here. If anything other than me tries to come through that inner door, light it up. I nodded. Standard procedure. Radio check every 30 seconds once you're in the chamber. Mac cycled the inner door. It hissed open, revealing the small, sterile space of the airlock. He slipped inside, rifle up, scanning every corner. The door hissed shut behind him. Mac, radio check, I said into my comm unit. Static. Not the loud, overwhelming burst we'd heard in the comms room, but a softer, sibilant hiss, like breath being drawn through clenched teeth. Mac, repeat, radio check. I tried again, my voice sharper, more static, and this time, unmistakably, a whisper underneath it, too distorted to comprehend but undeniably vocal. Evelyn gasped, her eyes wide. I heard it that time. It's It's like it's in the static. "Mac, respond," I yelled, overriding protocol for sheer volume. The static intensified for a moment. Then, cutting through it, Mac's voice, strained. "Outer door. It's frozen solid. Can't budge it. Mechanism is iced over." But it was open. I saw fresh snow blown inside the sill. "Is it secure now? Can you seal it from your side?" "Trying. No, the manual override is jammed too. Something's wedged in the track. Damn it." A muffled curse then. "Hold on. I think I can." Shit. The comm went dead. Not to static this time. Just pure, absolute silence. "Mac," I shouted into the comm. Nothing. "Mac, report." Evelyn was already at the airlock controls, her face a mask of fear and determination. "I'm trying to override the inner door cycle from here. It's not responding." "Force it," I snapped, moving to assist, my own fear a cold fist in my gut. We both threw our weight against the manual release lever. It didn't budge. It was as if the door had been welded shut. "This isn't possible," Evelyn panted, her breath misting in the suddenly colder air near the airlock. "The hydraulics should override any physical obstruction on a door this size, unless it's catastrophically damaged." We could hear faint scraping sounds from within the airlock chamber now, followed by a dull thud. My blood ran cold. Mac was one of the toughest, most resourceful men I knew. Whatever was happening in there, he wasn't taking it quietly. "Mac," I bellowed, hammering on the thick composite material of the door. "What's your status?" Silence. Then, a soft tapping from the other side. Tap, 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 tap. Not frantic, measured. "Is that him?" Evelyn whispered, her eyes fixed on the door. "I don't know." The tapping stopped. Then a voice, so quiet we almost missed it, seeped through the door, or perhaps through the very walls. It wasn't Mac's voice. It was a woman's voice, hesitant, frightened. "Hello? Is someone out there? Please, let me in. It's so cold." Evelyn recoiled as if struck. That sounds like Dr. Hansen, Lena Hansen, the geologist, from the personnel files. My mind raced. Lena Hansen was one of the 12 missing researchers, presumed dead or worse. How could she be in the airlock? And where was Mac? "Lena, is that you?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady, authoritative. "This is Albert Davis, with a rescue team. Where is Sergeant Thorne? He went into the airlock moments ago." A pause. Then the voice, closer now, pressed against the door. "Thorne? I don't know a Sergeant Thorne. It's just me. I've been hiding. Please, you have to help me. It's out there. It found the others." The voice was laced with genuine terror. If it was an act, it was flawless. "Where are the others, Lena?" I pressed. "What happened here?" "Gone," the voice sobbed. "Taken. It wears their faces now. It learns." A chill snaked down my spine. "It wears their faces." That resonated with the cryptic log entry. "Don't trust the reflections." Evelyn looked at me, her expression a mixture of horror and dawning comprehension. "Albert, the mimicry, the log entry. Could it?" "Stay back from the door, Lena," I commanded. "We need to verify your identity." How? I had no idea. We had no visual. The camera inside the airlock was presumably still showing an empty chamber, if it was even still functioning correctly. "Verify?" Her voice sharpened, losing some of its pitiable quality, replaced by an edge of something else. Resentment? Or was it cunning? After all this time, I've been trapped, freezing, listening to it. Hunt. And you want to verify? "Where's Mac?" I repeated, my hand tightening on my weapon. A low chuckle. It was still Lena Hansen's voice, but the sound was utterly devoid of warmth, of humanity. It was the sound of autumn leaves crumbling to dust, of ice cracking in the deep dark. Mac? Oh, you mean the big one? He was resistant, but he'll learn. They all learn. The temperature in the corridor seemed to drop several more degrees. My breath was now a thick, choking plume. The emergency lights flickered erratically, casting the hallway into a disorienting strobe effect. What are you? Evelyn breathed, more to the entity than to me. The voice on the other side of the door shifted, subtly at first, then with horrifying speed. It became Mac's voice, strained, gasping. Davis, Ev, get out of here. It's a trap. It's... His voice dissolved into a choked gurgle, followed by a wet, tearing sound that made my stomach heave. Then, silence again, punctuated only by our ragged breathing and the insistent, mournful howl of the wind outside, which now sounded less like weather and more like a chorus of the damned. Evelyn stumbled back, her hand clapped over her mouth, her eyes wide with terror. I felt a wave of cold fury, mixed with a sickening dread. Mac was compromised, possibly dead. And we were trapped in here with whatever had done that to him, whatever was now using his voice, Lena Hansen's voice, to torment us. The station, which had felt merely abandoned and eerie, now felt actively malevolent, a hunting ground, and we were the prey. We need to regroup, I said, my voice hoarse. Operations room, barricade the door. We need to try and understand what we're dealing with. Evelyn nodded mutely, her gaze still fixed on the airlock door, as if expecting it to burst open and unleash hell. We backed away slowly, then turned and ran, the sound of that horrible, wet tearing echoing in my mind. The whispers seemed to follow us, slithering from the vents, from the very walls of the station. They were clearer now, no longer just on the edge of hearing. They were snippets of voices, some male, some female, speaking in English, but also in languages I didn't recognize. Fragments of conversations, pleas, warnings, all interwoven with that soft, sibilant hiss. Reaching the operations room, we slammed the heavy door shut. It had a formidable magnetic lock, designed for security. I engaged it, then started looking for anything to wedge against it. There wasn't much. A heavy-duty chart table. We wrestled it into place, grunting with effort. It wouldn't hold against a determined assault, but it might buy us time. Evelyn had collapsed into a chair, shivering, though not, I suspected, entirely from cold. Mac, she whispered. We don't know his status for sure, I said, trying to project a confidence I didn't feel. But we have to assume the worst for now. That thing, it's a mimic. It uses voices. It said it wears faces. The energy signature, she said, her mind, even in shock, latching onto the scientific anomaly. It's spiked, dramatically. It's no longer just pulsing with my heartbeat. It's resonating with the entire station's electrical grid, and with us. Our biosignatures. She looked at her handheld device, her face illuminated by its eerie glow. It's mapping us, Albert. It's learning our physiology. The previous team's logs, I said, the pieces clicking into place with horrifying clarity. It knows our names. The energy signature is adapting. They weren't going mad. They were documenting this entity. A loud bang on the operations room door made us both jump. Not a fist, but something heavier, more forceful. The chart table shuddered. Another bang, harder this time. It knows where we are, Evelyn breathed. It was always here, I said, remembering the last log entry. It's not a phenomenon. It's here. It hadn't just arrived. It was site-kestrel, or some integral, parasitic part of it. The station wasn't built to study an anomaly. It was built around it. Or perhaps, for it. The lights in the operations room flickered violently, then went out, plunging us into near-total darkness, save for the faint glow of Evelyn's device and the emergency exit signs. When they flickered back on a few seconds later, dimmer than before, the main monitor on the far wall, the one that had been displaying the station logo, was now active. It showed a live feed from inside the airlock. Mac was there, or rather, something that looked like Mac. It was standing perfectly still, facing the camera, its back to the inner door that led to us. Its head was slumped forward, features obscured by shadow, but it was wearing Mac's gear, his parka, his tactical vest. For a horrifying moment, I thought he was alive, perhaps injured. Then, it slowly raised its head. The face was Mac's, but horribly, subtly wrong. The skin was too pale, stretched too tight over the bones. The eyes were open, but they were milky, unfocused, like the eyes of a deep-sea fish. And the expression, it was a blank, calm, almost curious look, utterly devoid of Mac's characteristic intensity. A thin trickle of dark fluid oozed from one nostril. "Oh God," Evelyn whimpered, shrinking back. The thing on the screen, the thing wearing Mac's face, smiled. It was not Mac's smile. It was too wide, too predatory, filled with teeth that seemed just a little too long, a little too sharp. Then it spoke, its voice a grotesque parody of Mac's familiar rumble, layered with that sibilant whisper we'd heard in the static. "Found you." Another thunderous crash against our door. The table leg splintered. The magnetic locks groaned in protest. It's playing with us, I realized, my professional calm shattering, replaced by a primal urgency. It's showing us this to break us down. The Mac thing on the screen tilted its head, the smile unwavering. Break down? No. Understand. Absorb. Integrate. Its voice was a chorus now, Mac's tones interwoven with Lena Hansen's, and others I didn't recognize, all overlaid with that pervasive, chilling hiss. "You are new. So much to learn." The equipment around us began to hum, a low, resonant thrum that vibrated through the floor, through our bones. Evelyn's device started to emit a high-pitched whine, its screen flickering wildly. The EM field, it's overwhelming my sensors. It's everywhere. I looked around the operations room, desperately searching for an alternative exit, a weapon, anything. The station schematics were still displayed on one of the auxiliary monitors, now flickering badly. My eyes scanned them. Maintenance shafts, vent purity systems, anything that led out. There. I pointed to a narrow duct indicated on the schematic, running from the corner of the operations room towards what looked like a sub-level storage area. It'll be a tight squeeze, but it might get us out of this immediate kill box. Another deafening impact on the door. A hinge tore loose with a screech of tortured metal. The door sagged inwards. No time to argue. I grabbed Evelyn's arm, pulling her towards the indicated wall panel. It was secured with standard release latches. I fumbled with them, my fingers numb with cold and adrenaline. The panel came away, revealing a dark, narrow opening. Dust and an odor of decay wafted out. "Go, go," I urged Evelyn. She hesitated for only a second, then scrambled into the tight space. The operations room door buckled, a monstrous, shadowy arm, too long, too thin, ending in razor-sharp talons, punched through the composite material near the handle. It wasn't Mac's arm. It was something else entirely. I threw myself into the shaft after Evelyn, pulling the panel back into place as best I could. It wouldn't hold for long, but it was better than nothing. Darkness enveloped us, thick and cloying, filled with the sounds of Evelyn's panicked breathing and my own hammering heart. And behind us, the splintering crash as the operations room door finally gave way, followed by a sound that was not quite a roar, not quite a shriek, but something alien and utterly terrifying, echoing down the narrow passage after us. We were no longer just investigators. We were fugitives, hunted by an ancient, unknowable horror in a place that was supposed to be a beacon of science, now transformed into our frozen, metallic tomb. The second phase of our mission, fixing the comms, felt like a cruel joke. Survival was the only mission now, and the odds were not looking good. The isolation was complete. The monster was inside. The maintenance shaft was suffocatingly narrow, barely wide enough for us to crawl single file. Dust, thick as centuries, choked my lungs with every ragged breath. The metallic tang of rust and something else, something faintly organic and rotten, filled the air. Evelyn was ahead of me, her movements jerky with terror, the faint beam of her emergency headlamp bobbing erratically, casting grotesque, dancing shadows on the corrugated walls of the duct. Behind us, I could hear it. Not the clear, distinct sounds of pursuit, but something far more unnerving, a slithering, rustling noise, like 1,000 dry leaves skittering across metal, punctuated by soft, wet clicks. It wasn't moving fast. It didn't need to. It knew the station, every hidden passage, every dark corner. We were rats in its maze. "Keep moving, Ev," I urged, my voice a harsh whisper. The schematic showed this shaft should intersect with a larger utility tunnel near sub-level storage B. "How far?" she gasped, her voice strained. "Maybe 50 meters. Hard to tell with the bends." The schematics had been a blessing, but they only showed the official layout. They didn't show whatever secret warrens this entity might have carved for itself within the station's bones. The sounds behind us grew fainter, or perhaps the entity was being deliberately quiet, letting our own fear do its work. The silence that replaced it was almost worse, pregnant with unseen menace. Every scrape of my gear against the metal, every rustle of my cold-weather clothing sounded deafening. After what felt like an eternity of claustrophobic crawling, Evelyn stopped. I think this is it. There's a junction plate ahead." Her headlamp beam illuminated a square metal panel, secured with wing nuts. I reached past her, my fingers fumbling with the cold, stiff fasteners. One by one, they gave way. With a grunt, I pushed the panel inward. It swung open into a slightly larger space, revealing a narrow catwalk suspended over a dark abyss. This was the utility tunnel. It was colder here, the air carrying the distinct chill of the station's unheated underbelly. Evelyn scrambled out, then helped pull me through. We stood for a moment on the narrow metal grating, peering into the gloom. The tunnel stretched away in both directions, lined with pipes, conduits, and cabling, disappearing into oppressive darkness. Faint emergency lights cast pools of sickly green illumination at long intervals. "Which way?" Evelyn whispered, her breath pluming thickly. I consulted the mental map I'd formed from the schematics. Storage B should be to our left. If we can find some supplies, maybe even a hardwired internal comm panel that bypasses the main system, it's a long shot. "Anything is better than going back there," she said, her gaze flicking nervously towards the shaft opening we just exited. We started moving along the catwalk, our footsteps echoing unnervingly in the vast space. The pipes alongside us gurgled and hissed intermittently, as if the station itself were alive and breathing fitfully. The faint, pervasive hum we'd felt in the operations room was stronger here, vibrating up through the soles of our boots, a constant, subliminal thrum that set my teeth on edge. Suddenly, Evelyn grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in like talons. "Listen." I froze. At first, I heard nothing but the station's internal symphony of decay. Then, drifting from the darkness ahead, a sound. Singing. A woman's voice, soft and melodious, singing a lullaby I vaguely recognized from my own distant childhood. It was impossibly clear, achingly beautiful, and utterly out of place in this metal crypt. "No," Evelyn breathed, her face ashen in the green emergency light. That's my mother's lullaby, the one she used to sing to me." The singing grew closer, seeming to emanate from around the next bend in the tunnel. It was perfectly replicated, every nuance, every breathy pause. But overlaid with it, almost imperceptibly, was that faint, sibilant hiss, like static on a perfectly tuned radio. "It's trying to lure us," I said, my voice grim. "It's accessing memories. It's learning what's important to us." The implications were staggering. This wasn't just a mimic of sight and sound. It was a psychic vampire, feeding on our very identities. "How?" Evelyn whispered, her eyes wide with a new, deeper horror. "How can it know that?" "I don't know, but we can't let it get into our heads." I pulled her back, away from the direction of the singing. "The other way. There has to be another access point to the main levels, or an emergency exit." We retreated, moving faster now, the beautiful, terrible lullaby echoing behind us, fading slowly as we put distance between ourselves and its source. The psychological assault was relentless. First, the visual horror of the Mac thing. Now this, an intimate violation of memory. The utility tunnel seemed to stretch on forever. We passed several numbered access hatches leading upwards, presumably back into the main station levels. Each one felt like a potential trap. Finally, we came to a larger intersection where several tunnels converged. A faded sign, barely legible, pointed down one passage. "Geothermal exchange access. Authorized personnel only." "Geothermal exchange," Evelyn said, her scientific mind kicking in despite the fear. "That's the station's primary heat source. If we could disrupt it, maybe create a massive temperature drop, would that affect the entity?" "It's a thought," I conceded. "But it could also freeze us to death. Let's see if we can find a secure room first, try to get our bearings. And we need to find out what happened to Mac. I mean, really happened." We chose another tunnel, one that, according to my mental schematics, should lead towards the station's original core, the oldest part of the facility, built around the initial discovery of the energy fluctuations. It was here, I hoped, we might find records, something that predated the current team, something that might explain the true nature of Site Kestrel. This tunnel was older, narrower, the air thick with the smell of ozone and damp concrete. It sloped downwards, deeper into the earth. After a few hundred meters, we came to a heavy steel door, like a bank vault, with a circular wheel for a handle. A faded stencil read, "Site Kestrel, Level Omega, Restricted Access, Project Chimera Archives." Level Omega, Project Chimera. These were names not found in Sterling's briefing. "This is it," I said, a grim satisfaction mixing with my apprehension. "This has to be where the real answers are." The wheel was stiff, rusted. It took both our efforts, straining against it, before it finally yielded with a groan of protesting metal. The door swung inward on ponderous hinges, revealing a room unlike any other we had seen in the station. It wasn't a lab or an office. It was a vault. The walls were lined with reinforced shelving, packed with old-fashioned physical files, data tapes, and strange, unidentifiable artifacts encased in clear, sealed containers. A single, bare bulb hung from the ceiling, casting a dim yellow light over everything. The air was cold, dry, and utterly still. In the center of the room stood a heavy metal desk with a single, antiquated computer terminal. "This place, it feels ancient," Evelyn murmured, stepping inside cautiously. "Not just old, like a tomb." "Project Chimera," I read from a dusty binder I pulled from a shelf. "Feasibility study, containment and analysis of non-terrestrial spatio-temporal anomaly, KTRL-1. The date on the binder was 15 years ago, 12 years before Site Kestrel was officially established. This was the hidden history, the secret Sterling had so carefully omitted. Site Kestrel wasn't a recent research initiative. It was the latest iteration of a much older, much more dangerous project. Evelyn had moved to the terminal. She blew a layer of dust off the keyboard. "It's an isolated system, no network connection, probably air-gapped for security." She found a power switch. With a hum and a flicker, the monochrome screen came to life. displaying a simple command prompt. "Let's see what secrets you've been keeping, Project Chimera," she muttered, her fingers flying across the keys, typing commands I didn't recognize. While she worked, I explored the shelves. The files detailed decades of clandestine research, tracking an anomalous energy signature that had been detected in the Brooks Range since the early Cold War. Initial theories ranged from Soviet secret weapons to undiscovered geological phenomena. But as the research progressed, the data became stranger, more unsettling. I found reports from previous expeditions, long before Site Kestrel was even a blueprint. Small, covert teams inserted into the area, equipped with primitive sensors. Their logs were eerily similar to the ones from the current station. Accounts of equipment malfunction, strange noises, disorientation, and a growing sense of being watched. Several teams had vanished without a trace. One particularly chilling report, dated 1978, from a two-man geological survey team, described encountering whispers on the wind that knew our private thoughts, and seeing figures moving in the snow that left no tracks, their faces indistinct, like smudged photographs. The final entry was a single, scrawled sentence, "It wants in." Then I found the files on Subject 0, not a person, but the anomaly itself, Control 1. It was described not as an energy signature, but as an intelligent, non-corporeal entity, or a localized distortion in space-time with apparent sentience. It exhibited mimicry, adaptive learning, and an ability to manipulate electromagnetic fields and, terrifyingly, influence susceptible human consciousness. "Albert, look at this," Evelyn called, her voice hushed. She had accessed a series of video logs, time-stamped from the weeks leading up to the current team's disappearance. The first showed Dr. Eris Thorne, the lead physicist, looking haggard but determined. Log entry, day 47. The entity, we've taken to calling it the Witness because of its observational behavior, is becoming more interactive. It's definitely responding to our attempts to categorize its energy patterns. The mimicry is becoming more sophisticated. Yesterday, it replicated a segment of Dr. Hansen's doctoral thesis verbatim over the comms, a section she hadn't even digitized yet. Another log, a few days later. Thorne looked worse, dark circles under his eyes. "It's learning too fast. We tried to establish a communication protocol using prime numbers, basic mathematical sequences. It responded not with numbers but with memories. It played back a recording of my daughter singing Happy Birthday, a recording that only exists on my personal phone, which is powered down and in my locker." His voice cracked. "How does it access these things? Is it reading our minds? Is it sifting through us?" The final video log was from Lena Hansen, the geologist whose voice the entity had mimicked at the airlock. She was pale, her eyes darting nervously. "It's inside the station now. Not physically, not yet. But it's in the systems, in the walls. We hear it all the time. It talks to us in the voices of our loved ones. Some of us are seeing things, people who aren't there. Reflections that move wrong. Thorne thinks it's trying to understand us, to find a compatible form. He says it's always been looking for a way to bridge the gap, to manifest. This station, with all its technology, all its human minds, we might have given it the perfect interface." She leaned closer to the camera, her voice dropping to a terrified whisper. "It's not studying us. We're the experiment, and I think it's found what it was looking for." The video ended abruptly in a burst of static. So, this was the truth of Site Kestrel. Not a research station, but a baited trap, or perhaps a petri dish. And the entity wasn't some vague energy. It was an ancient, intelligent predator, and we, the human occupants, were its prey, its subjects, and potentially its new skins. "They knew," Evelyn said, her voice trembling with anger and fear. "Sterling, the agency, they knew what this thing was capable of. They knew the risks, and they sent those people in here anyway. They sent us. Institutional failure. It was a recurring theme in my line of work, but this felt different, more profound, more sinister. This wasn't incompetence. This was calculated sacrifice. As if on cue, the single bare bulb in the vault flickered, then went out, plunging us into absolute darkness. Evelyn gasped. I fumbled for my tactical flashlight, my heart hammering against my ribs. The oppressive silence of the vault was suddenly broken by a sound. A soft, rhythmic tapping, coming from the other side of the heavy steel door. Tap, 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 tap. The same pattern we'd heard at the airlock. Then, a voice. My voice. Perfectly replicated. Calm, reassuring, exactly as I would sound, trying to soothe a frightened colleague. Evelyn? Albert? Are you in there? It's me, Mac. I got away. I managed to double back. Open the door. We need to stick together. Evelyn made a small, choked sound. I shone my flashlight beam on the door, then on her face. She was staring at the door, mesmerized, a flicker of desperate hope warring with stark terror in her eyes. Don't listen to it, Ev, I said, my own voice sounding harsh and unfamiliar after hearing its perfect mimicry. That's not Mac. Mac is compromised. But it sounds exactly like him, she whispered. What if he did escape? The voice outside chuckled, a dry, knowing sound, still in Mac's timbre. Don't be paranoid, Albert. That's what it wants. For us to doubt each other. I saw what it did. I know how it works now. Let me in. I have a plan. It was good, so good. It was playing on our desperation, our training, our need for solidarity in the face of overwhelming odds. If I hadn't seen that thing on the monitor wearing Mac's face, if I hadn't heard its true layered voice. Mac, I called out, my voice deliberately loud, firm. What was the name of the bar we went to in Quantico after the training exercise for Operation Nightshade? The one where you spilled beer all over that Marine colonel? Silence from the other side of the door. A long, heavy pause. The rhythmic tapping stopped. Then, the voice, no longer Mac's, but a cold, flat, androgynous tone, devoid of all inflection, all humanity. The hiss was more pronounced now, an undercurrent of pure, alien menace. There was no bar, there was no Operation Nightshade. Those are fabricated memories, implanted during your indoctrination phase at Camp Peary. Your entire operational history prior to this assignment is a construct, Albert Davis. Or should I call you Subject 734? My blood turned to ice. Camp Peary. Subject 734. Those were details so deeply buried, so compartmentalized, that not even my direct superiors should have had access to them. Details that I myself had only fleeting, nightmarish recollections of, from the very beginning of my career, things I dismissed as stress-induced paranoia. This thing wasn't just accessing recent memories from the station's victims. It was reaching into the deepest, most protected recesses of my mind. It knew things it had no earthly way of knowing. Evelyn stared at me, her face a mask of horrified confusion. Albert, what is it talking about? Before I could answer, the heavy steel door of the vault began to groan, not from the handle, but from the hinges themselves, as if immense pressure were being applied from the outside. Dust sifted down from the ceiling. The floor beneath our feet vibrated. The entity was done playing games. It was coming in. The artifacts, I shouted, remembering the strange objects in their sealed containers. If this thing is non-corporeal or based on energy, maybe some of these were designed to disrupt it. It was a wild guess, a desperate hope. We scrambled towards the shelves, frantically pulling down containers, trying to make sense of the cryptic labels. Anti-chronoton emitter, localized reality anchor, null, entropy field projector. Most looked like inert pieces of strange metal or crystal. How did they work? Did they even work? The door buckled inwards with a deafening shriek of tearing metal. A thin black tendril, impossibly sharp, whipped through the Instenden gap, faster than eyesight, slicing through a stack of files on a nearby shelf, sending papers flying. Evelyn screamed, recoiling. I grabbed the heaviest, most complex-looking device I could find, a metallic cylinder with strange lenses and what looked like copper coils, and thrust it at her. Figure it out, quickly. Another tendril, thicker this time, punched through the weakened door, then another. They moved with a sickening, fluid grace, like the arms of some abyssal squid, exploring the room, tasting the air. I fumbled for my sidearm, knowing it would likely be useless against something like this, but the ingrained training was too strong. The door was now visibly bending, the metal groaning under unimaginable force. Evelyn was frantically examining the device I'd given her, turning dials, flipping switches that seemed to have no obvious function. I don't know how this works. There's no power source, no interface. Then improvise, I yelled, as a tendril lashed out, missing my head by inches, shattering a container on the shelf behind me. The artifact inside, a pulsating, obsidian-like rock, clattered to the floor and winked out, its internal light extinguished. The door finally gave way with a cataclysmic crash, torn from its hinges and flung across the vault to smash against the far wall. Standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the dim light of the corridor, was not the Mac thing. It was something else. Tall, impossibly thin, its limbs too long, its form vaguely humanoid but utterly alien. It seemed to shimmer, as if viewed through heat haze or disturbed water. It had no discernible face, just a shifting, shadowy vortex where features should have been. And from it emanated that soul-chilling, multi-layered voice, now a cacophony of all the voices it had absorbed, overlaid with the constant, pervasive hiss. "Your secrets are delicious," it whispered, its form wavering as it glided into the room. "Your fears, your identities, they will make fine additions." The tendrils retracted into its shifting mass, then reformed, lashing out towards us. I fired my weapon. The bullets passed through the entity's form as if it were smoke, impacting harmlessly on the wall behind it. "It's not physical," I shouted, backing away, trying to keep Evelyn behind me. "Wait," Evelyn cried, holding up the cylindrical device. She had twisted something, and a section of it now glowed with a faint, internal blue light. The label, Null Entropy Field Projector. If it disrupts energy patterns. She aimed it at the advancing creature and pressed a large, unmarked stud on its side. There was no sound, no beam of light, but the air in front of the device seemed to ripple. The entity paused, its form flickering violently. The cacophony of voices faltered, replaced by a high-pitched shriek of static and rage. It recoiled, its tendrils flailing, as if struck by an invisible force. "It's working," Evelyn yelled, a note of triumphant disbelief in her voice. It's disrupting its coherence." The entity staggered back, its form becoming more diffuse, less defined. Parts of it seemed to dissipate like smoke, only to reform an instant later. It was clearly in distress, the ambient hum in the room fluctuating wildly, the lights flickering like a dying star. "Keep pressure on it," I urged. "We need to get out of here." But where could we go? The station was its domain. We were deep underground, in a dead-end vault. The entity, recovering some of its composure, let out another shriek, and this time the very walls of the vault seemed to groan in response. Cracks spiderwebbed across the concrete. Dust and debris rained down from the ceiling. The floor began to tilt. "It's tearing the place apart," I realized. "It's going to bring this whole level down on top of us." The null entropy projector in Evelyn's hand suddenly sputtered, the blue light flickering. I don't know how long this thing will last. It feels like it's drawing power from me. Her face was pale, beaded with sweat, her hand trembling from the strain of holding the device steady. We were trapped. The only exit was blocked by a raging, extra-dimensional horror that was now trying to collapse our sanctuary around us. The hope that the artifact had given us was already fading, replaced by the cold certainty of our impending doom. This wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. It was a desperate, last-ditch stand against something that defied all known laws of reality, and reality itself seemed to be coming apart at the seams. The vault was groaning like a dying beast, the concrete cracking, the metal shelves tearing from their moorings. The entity, though visibly discomfited by the null entropy projector, was relentless, its shadowy form surging and receding like a tide of pure malice. It was clear the device Evelyn held was only a temporary deterrent, not a weapon capable of destroying it. And it was costing her dearly. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her knuckles white as she clung to the strange artifact. "We have to move," I yelled over the cacophony. "The geothermal access tunnel. It's our only chance." "How?" Evelyn cried, her voice strained. "It's blocking the way." I scanned the rapidly deteriorating room. My gaze fell upon a section of the wall where a large ventilation grate was set, higher up, near the ceiling. It was small, probably leading to an exhaust shaft, but it was an opening. "There, give me a boost." While Evelyn kept the projector aimed at the entity, forcing it to remain partially dispersed and hesitant, I dragged the heavy metal desk, now dented and scarred, towards the wall beneath the grate. It screeched in protest. I climbed onto it, reaching for the grate. It was secured with heavy bolts. My multi-tool, my fingers, clumsy with adrenaline, worked at the fastenings. Behind me, the entity shrieked, a sound that felt like ice picks in my eardrums. A shadowy tendril lashed out, narrowly missing Evelyn, and slammed into the projector. The device sparked violently, the blue light dying to a faint flicker. Evelyn cried out, stumbling back, the projector falling from her grasp. It clattered to the tilting floor, its light extinguished. "No," she screamed. The entity solidified, its form becoming more defined, its myriad stolen voices blending into a triumphant, guttural roar. It surged forward. The last bolt on the grate gave way. I tore it free, revealing a dark, narrow passage. "Evelyn, now." I reached down, grabbed her arm, and hauled her bodily onto the desk, then shoved her towards the opening. She scrambled in, desperation lending her speed. As I turned to follow, the entity was upon me. Its touch was not physical, not in the conventional sense. It was a wave of utter cold, a psychic assault that ripped through my mind, flooding it with a torrent of alien thoughts, terrifying images, and the dying screams of its previous victims. I felt my consciousness, my very identity, being peeled away, layer by layer. My body locked up, paralyzed by the sheer force of its will. "You will be assimilated," the chorus of voices whispered directly into my mind, a promise of oblivion. "Your knowledge, your experiences, will enrich us." Through the haze of pain and terror, I saw Evelyn leaning back out of the shaft, her face a mask of horror. She was shouting something, but her voice was drowned out by the psychic storm raging in my head. Then, I saw her hand. In it, she held a small, metallic object, a signal flare, from her emergency kit. With a defiant cry, she struck the flare. It ignited with a blinding, magnesium-white intensity, far brighter than any flashlight. She thrust it towards the entity. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. The creature recoiled as if physically struck by a thunderbolt, its form dissolving, its voices screaming in a new, higher pitch of agony. The intense light, the sudden burst of raw chemical energy, seemed to overload its senses, to disrupt its tenuous hold on our dimension. It thrashed, its shadowy limbs flailing wildly, its form flickering in and out of existence like a faulty hologram. The psychic pressure on my mind vanished. I gasped, air flooding my lungs, my limbs unlocking. I didn't waste the opportunity. I threw myself towards the opening, scrambling into the narrow exhaust shaft, just as a section of the vault ceiling collapsed with a deafening roar, sending a plume of dust and debris billowing out. Evelyn grabbed my hand, pulling me further into the shaft. We crawled frantically, the sounds of the vault's destruction and the entity's tortured shrieks echoing behind us. The flare, still burning in Evelyn's hand, cast a harsh, dancing light, illuminating our desperate escape. The shaft was steep, almost vertical in places. It was clearly not designed for human passage. We scraped and clawed our way upwards, driven by pure, unadulterated terror. After what felt like an age, the shaft opened into a larger conduit, part of the station's primary ventilation system. It was still tight, but we could at least move in a crouch. The geothermal exchange, Evelyn gasped, the flare now sputtering, its brilliant light beginning to fade. If we can get there, the schematics showed an emergency surface access hatch, meant for venting superheated steam if the system overloads. Lead the way, I panted, my mind still reeling from the entity's psychic assault. Fragments of its alien thoughts, its cold, predatory hunger, still echoed in the recesses of my consciousness. I knew, with a chilling certainty, that a part of it had touched me, had tasted my mind, and would not forget. The flare died, plunging us back into near-total darkness, relieved only by the faint red glow of distant emergency indicators. We navigated by touch, by memory of the schematics, by sheer desperation. The station around us was now a symphony of destruction, groans of stressed metal, distant crashes, the hiss of escaping steam. The entity, in its rage or perhaps in its death throes, was tearing Site Kestrel apart from the inside. We finally reached a heavily insulated door marked Geothermal Core Access, Extreme Hazard. The air here was hot, humid, vibrating with the thrum of immense power. Evelyn managed to force the manual override. We stumbled into a vast, cavernous chamber, filled with a labyrinth of pipes, turbines, and heat exchangers, all glowing with a dull red heat. The noise was deafening, a continuous, high-pitched whine and the roar of superheated steam. The surface hatch should be up there, Evelyn shouted over the din, pointing towards a catwalk high above us, near the curved ceiling of the chamber. As we started towards the access ladder, a section of the floor behind us buckled and tore open. From the steaming rupture, the entity emerged. It was diminished, its form less stable, flickering and insubstantial in places, like a damaged projection. The brilliant light of the flare had clearly wounded it, perhaps severely. But it was still there, still hunting. Its chorus of voices was weaker, more discordant, but the underlying hiss, the core of its alien malevolence, was still present. "You cannot escape," it rasped, the voices struggling to synchronize. "We are eternal." It lunged, or rather, flowed towards us, faster than its wounded state should have allowed. We scrambled up the ladder, the metal rungs hot beneath our hands. The entity followed, not climbing, but gliding up the wall beside the ladder, its form distorting to pass through pipes and conduits. We reached the catwalk. The emergency access hatch was at the far end, a heavy, circular plate secured by a large release wheel. I ran towards it, while Evelyn turned to face our pursuer. She no longer had the null entropy projector, nor the flare. She had nothing but her courage. But as the entity flowed onto the catwalk, its shadowy tendrils reaching for her, she did the only thing she could. She screamed. Not a scream of terror, but a scream of pure, defiant rage, a primal sound of a cornered animal fighting back. And as she screamed, she kicked out at a large, red lever on the control panel beside her, a lever marked Emergency Steam Purge. Alarms blared, klaxons wailed, red lights flashed throughout the chamber. With a deafening roar, massive vents in the ceiling and walls blasted open, unleashing torrents of superheated steam. The chamber filled almost instantly with a scalding, impenetrable white fog. The entity shrieked, a sound of pure, unadulterated agony, its form completely enveloped by the searing steam. Its voices dissolved into a cacophony of static and electronic squeals. Its shadowy form seemed to boil, to disintegrate, parts of it vaporizing like water on a hot skillet. "Albert, the hatch," Evelyn yelled, her voice barely audible over the roar of the steam. She was already at the release wheel, struggling to turn it. I joined her, adding my strength to hers. The wheel was stiff, corroded. The heat was unbearable, the steam scalding our exposed skin. Visibility was zero. We were working blind, fueled by adrenaline and the chilling screams of the dying entity behind us. With a final, agonized groan, the wheel turned. The hatch above us, a heavy plate of insulated steel, popped open with a hiss of equalizing pressure, revealing a square of dark, star-dusted sky. Cold, fresh air, unbelievably pure, poured down into the inferno of the geothermal chamber. "Go!" I yelled, pushing Evelyn towards the opening. A ladder was fixed to the side of the hatchway. She scrambled up it, disappearing into the night. I turned for one last look. Through a momentary swirl in the steam, I saw the entity. It was dissolving, its form collapsing in on itself, its substance turning to black, oily smoke that was sucked upwards by the venting steam. Its final, despairing shriek was cut short as its core seemed to implode, vanishing with a faint, implosive pop. Whether it was truly destroyed or merely dispersed, forced back to whatever hellish dimension it called home, I didn't know. I didn't care. All I cared about was the square of night sky above me. I climbed the ladder, emerging onto the flat roof of the geothermal plant, into the biting wind of the Alaskan night. Evelyn was there, huddled against a ventilation unit, shivering violently, her face smudged with soot and grime, but alive. The station below us was dying. Lights flickered and died. Sections of the structure groaned and collapsed. Plumes of smoke and steam billowed into the night sky. Sight Kestrel was consuming itself. We were alive. We had survived. But the cost was etched onto our souls. Mac was gone, absorbed, his form and voice twisted into a horrifying parody. The 12 members of the original research team, their fate was now terrifyingly clear. They were part of the chorus, their identities subsumed into the monstrous whole of the entity. We stumbled away from the dying station, across the frozen, windswept tundra. The weather system Sterling had warned about was upon us, the wind howling like a banshee, driving snow horizontally. We had no supplies, no shelter, no radio, just the clothes on our backs and the horrifying knowledge of what we had faced. Hours later, as dawn broke gray and indifferent over the ravaged landscape, we saw it. A flicker of light in the distance, a helicopter, low on the horizon, battling the storm. Captain Prendergast. Against all odds, he had come back. Or perhaps Sterling, for reasons of his own, had ordered him to. The rescue was a blur. The warmth of the helicopter cabin, the concerned faces of the medics, the long flight back to Fairbanks, then the debriefing. Not with Sterling this time, but with a team of blank-faced men in dark suits who listened to our story with unnerving calm, their expressions unreadable. I told them everything, about the entity, the mimicry, the psychic assault, the hidden vault, Project Chimera. I watched for any flicker of surprise, any sign that this was news to them. There was none. They knew. They had always known, or at least suspected, far more than they had ever let on. Our mission hadn't been a rescue or a diagnostic run. We had been live bait. Or perhaps a test, to see if the entity could be provoked, understood, or even controlled. Evelyn, broken but unbowed, corroborated my account, her scientific mind providing chillingly precise details of the entity's energy manipulation and adaptive capabilities. They listened, they recorded, they took our statements. Then they told us we were suffering from severe psychological trauma, stress-induced hallucinations due to prolonged exposure to extreme environmental conditions and equipment malfunction. Site Kestrel, they said, had suffered a catastrophic failure of its geothermal core, leading to the tragic loss of all personnel. A cover story, neat and tidy. We were separated, placed on indefinite medical leave, with the unspoken but clear understanding that we were to remain silent. The agency would handle the narrative. I never saw Evelyn Hayes again. I heard rumors, whispers through the few remaining contacts I trusted, that she had been transferred to a research facility in a remote desert location working on exotic energy containment, or that she had suffered a complete mental breakdown and was institutionalized. I hoped for the former but feared the latter. As for me, Albert Davis, Subject 734, I live with the echoes. The entity's touch on my mind left scars, fragments of its alien consciousness that surface in my nightmares. I see its shifting form in the shadows, hear its chorus of stolen voices in the wind. I know it's still out there, somewhere, in the dark spaces between worlds, waiting, listening, learning. It is ancient, patient, and eternal. Site Kestrel is gone, a frozen, radioactive ruin in the Alaskan wilderness, a monument to human arrogance and institutional deceit. But the thing it housed, the thing it fed, is not so easily erased. Sterling and his kind will continue their work, poking and prodding at horrors best left undisturbed, always believing they can control the uncontrollable. My last mission for special projects did not just haunt me, it remade me. I am no longer just Albert Davis, CIA operative. I am a witness. I know the truth about the things that lurk just beyond the veil of our perceived reality. And I know that sometimes the greatest act of professional competence is not to follow orders, but to survive and to remember, because someone has to. Someone has to bear the weight of that terrible, isolating knowledge. And that, I suppose, is my final, unending assignment. The silence of the Brooks Range is no longer empty for me. It is filled with the whispers of the assimilated, a chilling reminder of the fragility of our world and the vast, indifferent darkness that surrounds it.